This is not a real AR-15, or this, or this. The real AR-15 was created by Eugene Stoner in 1950s, and this is the real AR-15, where AR stands for Armalite Rifle, and 15 was the model number, hence we have the name AR-15. According to some mainstream media and some politicians,
they are weapons of war. Why do we allow our citizens to have such easy access to weapons of war?
I believe weapons of war have no place on our streets.
Because weapons of war...
AR-15s, those are assault rifles.
An AR-15 assault rifle.
An AR-15 assault rifle.
The weapon of war. And that weapon of war has no place on American streets.
Weapons of war be allowed on our streets. It was a weapon of war.
In a weapon of war?
Using weapons of war. To obtain weapons of war. Limit access to weapons of war that have no place on our street.
In this video, we will uncover the hidden facts behind AR-15, and we will try to understand why they have been called the weapon of war or assault rifle by the media and the politician. Who is there to blame? When did this started? To understand that, let's go back in time. It's 1944, and the German introduced Sturmgewehr 44, which ironically translates to assault rifle. While the Germans were raining bullets with the fancy Sturmgewehr, the Soviets have their own idea, and they made the legendary Automat Kalashnikov in 1947, also known as AK-47. Yes, the A in the AK stands for Automat, which means automatic in English. So AK Automatic Kalashnikov 47, and we have the name AK-47. This time, the US Army was still using the M14 rifles. However, the soldiers quickly started to voice their concern about the weight and the extreme recoil because of 7.62 mm rounds, rendering it literally impractical to use as an automatic rifle, and not very good while they were fighting in the trenches either. That is when Eugene Stoner came with his revolutionary design and his revolutionary creation, the Armalite 15. Now, due to financial problem and limitation in terms of manpower and production, Armalite had to sell the design and the AR-15 trademark to Colt Manufacturing Company in 1959, and that literally ended the whole AR-15, the one that's made by Eugene Stoner. Soon, Colt made some changes and introduced the Armalite 15 as M16 to the US Army. Okay, and later on it was adopted by almost all the divisions of the US Army. I'm not going into too much detail how that whole thing played out. If you want, I can make a video about that as well. And once it was adopted by the US Army, and later Colt initiated the sale of the semi-automatic version of M16 to the civilian market, and the first mass-produced version of M16 was AR-15 Spotter. This is when the AR-15 name was first used for a rifle that was made for civilian shooters. Now, for AR-15 Spotter, the company's designer used the M16 design, but they did replace a lot of internals. Hence, the rifle, they can be distinguished by their select fire M16 because they had two position selectors and lacking the front push pin and the flat receiver, lacking the protective ridges around the magazine release. And Colt themselves said that it looks identical, it feels identical, and the lethality is identical as well. They keep saying the AR-15 is manufactured by the same blueprint of the M16. It takes the same process, the same procedures, the same metallurgy, the same material, the same accuracy standard, the same everything. Now, why were they doing that? There were two main reasons behind that. One was the Vietnam War had came to an end, and the soldiers were returning home, and they wanted something that they used in the war every day. So they were advertising so that they can attract the soldiers and those individuals who could not enlist and that they wanted to serve in Vietnam War, so that they can feel that they have something from the war that the soldiers actually used, even though they could not enlist, they could not go. It gives that feeling that they have something or they participate. And in all those advertisements, the fact that it is not exactly the same weapon was kind of hidden. It was the afterthought of letting people know that this is a selective fire weapon. And all these advertisements over the span of decades subconsciously programmed the mind of Americans into thinking that these AR-15 are the real weapon of war straight out of jungles of Vietnam. After the Colt's patent expired in 1977, other manufacturers began to copy the design. The term AR-15, it's a Colt's registered trademark, used to refer its line of semi-automatic rifles. There are a number of companies, both foreign and domestic, that build one or the other form of the AR-15, although none of them can legally use the term AR-15. So if you go on any website, you will not see any of them listing their semi-automatic rifle as AR-15. So none of them are AR-15 to begin with. So what all these companies did, they started calling the AR-15 style, or the AR-15 variant, or the AR-15 platform, and add all of these up from all the different manufacturers, and now you have an endless variations of the AR-15 theme. Now the limitless range of modification and customization that made AR-15 platform so versatile also scared the anti-gun lobby. So while the Colt's long-standing advertisement campaign planted the seed of this assault rifle into the mind of people, and the anti-gun lobby and the politician kept on inflating it. Now let's take a deep dive into what exactly is an assault rifle. So the US Army defines assault rifle as short, compact, selective fire weapons that fire a cartridge intermediate in power between submachine gun and rifle cartridge. Now, in this strict definition, a firearm must have at least the following characteristic to be considered as an assault rifle. It must be capable of selective fire. It must have an intermediate cartridge, more powerful than a pistol, but less than a standard or a battle rifle. Its ammunition must be supplied from a detachable boxed magazine. It must be effective within a range of 300 meters or 330 yards. So according to all these requirements, the first requirement is not fulfilled by a rifle that's based on an AR-15 platform, which is they don't have a selective fire where the weapon can shoot more than one round with single trigger pull. And again, if you don't believe me, I will let the US Army explain itself what a single or what a semi-automatic rifle is versus what a fully automatic rifle is.
Some small arms weapons fire semi-automatically. Some fire automatically. And some can fire both ways. Weapons giving automatic fire will fire continuously as long as pressure is applied to the trigger or until the ammunition is exhausted. Weapons designed to give semi-automatic fire deliver only a single shot each time the trigger is squeezed. Let's look at a typical firing mechanism for a manually operated weapon. To see why it won't work with a bolt that moves back and forth automatically, we now have a semi-automatic firing mechanism. Each time we fire, the bolt moves back and forth before the trigger can be released. But the new sear is up waiting to catch the hammer. Then we can fire the next round by releasing the trigger and squeezing it again. Semi-automatic fire. One shot each time the trigger is squeezed. To get automatic fire, we must arrange the firing mechanism so the weapon will fire continuously as long as pressure is applied to the trigger. A part such as this disconnector will do the job for us. We've mounted it so that it can move up and down. As it moves down, it depresses the sear and releases the hammer. To move the disconnector each time the bolt closes, we'll put a lug on the bottom of the bolt. Now, as the bolt closes, the lug cams the disconnector, pushes the new sear down, and the hammer is released to fire the round. The bolt moves back and the lug clears the disconnector. The disconnector moves up and the new sear is in position to catch the hammer, even with the original sear held down by the trigger. The cycle starts over again, and the weapon will continue to fire as long as pressure is applied to the trigger. When the trigger is released, the original sear rises. Now, when the bolt disconnects the new sear, the original sear is up in position to catch the hammer and stop the firing. The hammer is held back, cocked, and automatic fire can be resumed merely by squeezing the trigger again.
Assault rifle like the M16 and nowadays M4 are designed to be capable of fully automatic or burst firing, allowing a single trigger pull to release multiple rounds. In contrast, an AR-15 style rifles are typically semi-automatics, which means one round with one trigger pull. Now, because of this, there is not a single army in the world that uses AR-15 style rifle for the combat. So calling an AR-15 style rifle as a weapon of war, it's like comparing a bird and a rocket just because they both can fly, but you know, that doesn't make any sense. Now, for those people who still think that it's not enough, let's get technical and let's see what are the differences between an M16 and an AR-15 parts. Let's talk about the bolt carrier. In the figure in front of you, you can see the bolt carrier of an M16 and an AR-15. The difference is the extra machining done on the bolt carrier of the AR-15 because there is no need for an auto sear. Now let's talk about the hammer. Right there in front of you, you have the hammer of an AR-15 and an M16. The basic difference is the protrusion extending upward on the back of the M16 hammer. On the backward travel of the bolt carrier group, the hammer is cocked and this protrusion catches to the auto sear where it is held until tripped by the forward motion of the bolt carrier. Again, this is to facilitate the fully automatic function of M16. Now let's talk about the trigger. Now looking at the side, we cannot tell there's much of a difference as both the trigger of M16 and the AR-15 looks almost identical, but only if we look from the top we will see the difference. The groove in the M16 trigger has been machined through the rear where the AR-15 grooves stop. This longer groove is necessary to facilitate the longer disconnect, which we will look at next. Here in front of you, you have the disconnector of the M16 and an AR-15. The M16 version has a longer tail, which extends rearwards. When installed in the lower receiver, this tail engages a specially machined groove in the M16 selector lever. And speaking of selector, let's talk about the selector now. And right here we have the selector lever of M16 and an AR-15. And we can see the difference between both the selector. There are multiple extra grooves in the M16 selector lever. Why? Because they have the functionality of auto fire. Those weapons are capable of automatically firing. If you feel that you learned something today, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What do you think? Do you think that Colt is the one that needed to be blamed? And let me know what you want to see next. And thank you for watching the video.